Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Aussie aviary here at Franklin Park Zoo. My name is Nora. I'm an educator here at the zoo, and we're going to meet some of our budgies, or parakeets, as you might call them. I'm going to have a little bit of seed in my hand to feed them, so I'm going to hold it out for them, and hopefully some of them will come over and eat them. So this Aussie aviary, it'll be open very soon. It opens at 10 a.m. and stays open until 4 p.m. on weekdays, and then on holidays and weekends, it stays open until 5. So now that one of them noticed there's some food, now they're all going to come over for a little snack. So this will give you a really nice close-up view of these budgies. And the one closest to my arm, and the blue or the green and yellow and black, that is the color that you would see if you were to see them in their natural habitat in Australia. And then there are some other color variations that come with selective breeding, because these are pretty commonly kept as pets. So those blue colors and the really pale yellow, it's not really a natural color that you might find out in nature. Now it might be kind of hard to see, but you might notice their feet. They have a pretty cool way of standing. So they have 2 digits or fingers that face forward and 2 that face backwards. And that is pretty common among birds that spend a lot of time in trees. It's called zygodactyl, and it helps them hold on really, really well. So you can kind of think of if you're holding onto something and your thumb might be opposite your other fingers, it gives you a much better grip. So having 2 toes facing forward and 2 facing backwards helps them hold on to tree branches. So some other birds you might notice have 3 digits facing forwards and just 1 facing backwards, and that'll be more common among birds that might spend a little more time on the ground and not so much time in trees. So you may also hear in the background, we do have a swan that lives in here as well. That is Merlot. And if you look really carefully at their beaks, they are really well adapted to eating seeds. So that's what they're eating off of my hand right now. And that's what they would eat out in nature too. They eat lots of grass seeds and any seeds that they might find. But if you have a pet parakeet, you might also feed them some leafy greens, maybe some other vegetables, but definitely lots of plants. Now, one of my favorite things about birds is how different the beaks of different birds look, just depending on what they use that beak for. So these guys and other birds that are going to eat lots of nuts and seeds, and they'll have the same kind of beak structure. But then you might have some other birds, like birds of prey, that'll have sharper beaks for ripping meat. And you might have woodpeckers that have really strong beaks for digging into trees. And then you may also have birds like the kiwi that have super long, really skinny beaks that are great for digging in the ground for any kind of bugs that might live there. So it looks like this guy's eating the last of those seeds, so we may go grab some more for them this morning. And if you come visit the Aussie aviary, you can also feed the budgies. We have sticks that have a little bit of this seed on the end of them, and they cost $3 per stick, and all of that money goes right back into making sure that this exhibit is beautiful and ready for our budgies. And it's very cool to be able to have them land on the stick and eat the seed right from you.
We had a question about if they're all the same species with the different color variations.
So these guys all are the same species. So like I mentioned, the green and the yellow, that's the natural color that you would find in nature. And then the other ones are just color variations that are caused by breeding. But they are all the same species, even though they are all these different colors. And if you notice on the males, they have that blue on the top of their beak. And then this one by my thumb is a female, so she has brown on the top of her beak. So that is a pretty quick way to tell the males and the females apart. Now you may notice that these guys are really small. They're only about the size of my hand, and their wingspan is only a little bit bigger than that. So they're a really small type of bird, but that makes it pretty easy for them to live in their habitat in Australia. So they live kind of in central Australia, where it's a lot of scrubland and kind of deserty, not a ton of water or plants there. So it can be hard for them to find food or water in that habitat. So being small means that they don't have to find as much of it, which is really good. Now we have over 200 budgies that live here in our Aussie aviary. You may not see them all at one time. Some of them might be in their back room, hanging out back there. But there are over 200 of them, which is pretty common for these birds because they do live in flocks. They're a very social bird. Here you go, here's a little bit more. And if you're lucky, when you come visit the Aussie aviary, you may notice them all fly from one end to the other all at once. And it makes this really loud sound, all of their wings together. And it's a pretty cool sight to see. And they do that because out in nature, if one of them either saw a predator coming or just suspected there might be danger, it would fly away really quickly. And all of the other members of the flock would follow it too, so that they can make sure that they're safe. And it might feel like they're going to crash into your head, but they're really good at knowing where they're going, even when they're going super fast. Sometimes they get a little protective of their food. That's okay.
And did you say Aussie is open the whole summer?
So it is open the whole summer. It'll be open from 10 to 4 on weekdays, and then 10 to 5 on weekends and holidays. And that'll go through Labor Day, and then keep an eye out for the changes in times after that. But because these guys live where it's very warm, usually they are not out and about in the winter. They'll just stay behind the scenes where the heat is. So there actually is a small population of these budgies in Florida, which is pretty cool. But for the most part, you'll find them either in Australia, or they're a very common pet, so lots of people will have them as a pet. And they are a very smart type of bird too. They're one of the birds that's really good at mimicking. So they can have pretty large vocabularies if you choose to try and teach them some human words. So there is a budgie that currently holds the record for largest vocabulary of any bird. It can speak almost 2,000 words, which is pretty impressive for a tiny little bird.
Someone mentioned they look like parakeets, not budgies.
They are parakeets, so it's a little confusing, but budgie and parakeet, they're just the same name for the same animal. So in Australia, they're pretty commonly referred to as budgies, and then here in America, we usually refer to them more as parakeets. But either name would be correct for them.
And you mentioned this a little earlier, but there's a question if the different color morphs ever interbreed that creates new feather patterns.
Ooh, so that definitely can happen. That's kind of how they get all these different color patterns, is just by kind of mixing different individuals with different colors and kind of seeing what happens. So this one, I'll see if I can show you, has a little bit of blue on its back and a lot of yellow. So that might be one that they might mix just to get some other color patterns going. People will also do that with different species of snake. So there are ball pythons that get pretty commonly mixed with other individuals of their species to create different colors. So that's another example of us humans kind of creating our own animals.
Do you know how long they live, typically?
So on average, they'll live about 5 to 10 years, but it has been reported that they'll live up to 20 years. It just depends a lot on the care that they're getting. So here at the zoo, they get lots of exercise, they get lots of room to fly around, and they get a nice healthy diet here, which can play a big part in making them, increasing their lifespan. But out in nature, it can be a little more harsh. They may not be guaranteed food like they are here. So that's where that average kind of goes down a little bit. But if you have one as a pet, they can live for quite a while, especially if you do lots of training and give them healthy food, and make sure that they get lots of exercise.
I think we're about out of time, so if you want to wrap up.
Awesome. Well, that is all that we have for today because the Aussie Aviary is about to open to the public for the day. So lots of them got to eat some seeds, and we will hopefully get a chance to see them later when you come visit the zoo. Thank you for joining us this morning.